Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is about next to nothing. I know this is going to make you feel seasick, but I just want to take the camera off of there for a minute so that it's handheld to just show you the tiny twinkle that I've just I've just taken several stills, which I'm hoping are going to go in the competition this month. Mainly because the sun's on it. Now, the difference that makes to a photo, because it adds dark and light, and I think it puts depth into it as well. The problem is with this camera is if you look at this area here, it's washed. Because that's got the brightest bit of sun on it, the camera can't cope with this and that and that. So it's sacrificed that and washed it. So it's too bright. You could sort of get the camera to do that sort of thing. But if you can get an even balance of light, the camera will do a good job. But when you get highlights and lowlights in the same shot, it has to average it basically. But what does happen with the stills camera is it averages it a lot better. So I've managed to take a reasonable shot of that. It's the only thing I've got that could go in this month. I was thinking of squashing up the Laelia anceps to get the four blooms close together so that I could get them in a nice composed shot. You know, literally sort of pull them in closer together sort of thing. I'm going to end up breaking a spike or something daft here, but you know, doing something along the lines of that to get a sort of nice shot. But at the end of the day, I know that Alan's Laelia anceps, last time he brought that into a meeting, I'll just put the camera back, last time he brought his anceps into a meeting, it had 7 spikes with an average of 5 blooms per spike. I can't compete with that. 2 spikes with 2 blooms on each. So just in case that's what he's going to put in, I wasn't going to bother. I think that camera's at a funny angle at the moment. That's where I've been messing with it tough. Stand on one side, you know. Anyway, the Zoom meeting, the first one for that society, I think went very well. As a meeting, let alone my video presentation, but as a meeting it sort of went okay. The host actually allowed me in early, which was a good idea because it meant we could try everything out before everybody joined and just make sure that everything was going to work okay, which we did, and it did, so that was okay. We had 5, 10, 15, I think we had about 17 people all together. That's quite a few more than I was expecting. I was expecting the worst. I was expecting the committee members and a couple of others. But we will have a meeting to discuss that meeting, to decide what we're going to do next. That won't be my decision. But yeah, it went okay. Everybody who joined had a little bit of a chat beforehand, and then the switched over to me sort of thing and started the video. I went and had a sit down while that was playing because I didn't need to be here. And then the video finished, and we did some questions, and part way through that there was a big pop-up because I'd actually used this camera, my actual video camera, for the Zoom meeting rather than the camera built into the laptop, which is poorer quality. So I'd actually used this camera, so this was the view in the Zoom meeting of me. This was my window with the camera sort of sat there. Part way through it came up with a big bright red flash, battery low, battery low, battery low. So I quickly had to turn that camera off and switch back to the laptop camera in, like, you know, in situ as we went along, which only took a few seconds, so I wasn't missing for long. But yeah, there were some interesting questions. One question that started off a bit of a discussion really was the timing for repotting And you know my attitude, you know, you wait until you're certain that new roots are about to grow, or you can actually see those new roots, and throw away the calendar, blow the time of year, just get those new roots going, or know your plant well enough to know that each year the new roots start around now, and then you can repot just before. That way you don't damage any of the delicate root tips. But that went into a discussion. What I did like was the president, who's also a judge, actually agreed. Because there's just so many people have got it in their head that you repot in the spring. Well, sometimes coincidentally that is true. But not just because it's spring, it's because the new roots happen to grow in the spring on that particular orchid. But that was nice to have the discussion around those points. It went quite well. And the meeting extended. It went beyond its time because it was still actively going, if you know what I mean. And in the end, time had to be called. Time, gentlemen, please. Ding, ding. Americans wouldn't know what I'm on about, would you? It's an English pub thing. At the end of the thing, they ring a bell, normally. They've actually got an actual proper bell. And they call, time, gentlemen, please, and ding the bell. And that means get it down your neck, get on your bike, and let them clear up for the evening. So, yeah, so I think the meeting went pretty well. And I suspect when we have the meeting about the meeting, we will decide that more meetings will go ahead, which is good. Because at least it means something is being done. As I said in that video, those of you who watched it, we've got two choices really. We either do something along the Zoom meeting type thing, or we don't do anything. The choices have just gone. We've lost our choices. So hopefully they will continue. There's already several other people have said they're happy to do a talk via the Zoom meeting. I don't know what they are going to come up with. I doubt if there'll be anybody else who'll do a video presentation, but we shall see, you know. But how about this then? An Orchid Society meeting with 3 YouTubers actually in the meeting at the same time. So I thought that was pretty good stuff, because the other Orchid Society I'm a member of, there's only one. You're looking at it. Nobody else does it. But you all know Lynn, and she's chairman of Wessex, the meeting yesterday. And also Patricia's Orchids, she's a member of Wessex as well, so she joined us yesterday. If you go back to my Zoom presentation video and have a look down the comments, you'll see the comment from Patricia's Orchids. It says, sorry, I'm not watching it, I'm going to wait till Saturday. So that was good. Yeah, so I think it all went okay. I mean, I had 2 cups of coffee. That cost me, because it was an afternoon meeting. I don't normally drink coffee in the afternoon, which meant I had to get out of bed in the middle of the night to let some out, as they say. Which annoys me when I have to do that, but doesn't happen often. We don't do bad. And the other thing I didn't say anything, but I was actually in pain. A few days ago, not that long ago, some little party things that were left over from Christmas. They were little sort of like puff pastry things with a lattice sort of top with like spicy minced beef in. So they were like a little sort of savoury pate type thing. And I warmed up some of those for me lunch. And I was doing something on the computer, not concentrating. I just picked one up and bit into it, and the meat inside was probably only about 2 degrees below burning point, and I actually burnt my lip and took all the skin off, and it bled. You know, it burnt deep enough to actually cause that. And that, well, you know what a burn's like. You know what a burn's like on your blinking finger or something, but on your lip. So that is literally only just, during today, it's just sort of eased off a bit enough to be not having to go extremely careful trying to drink my coffee and letting it get almost cold to be able to drink it, because obviously when you drink, it goes on your lip, doesn't it? So I haven't been able to have a hot drink. So, but it just seems to be getting better today. That was a silly thing to do, but and it was ages. You know, having taken one bite, I nearly threw it away. That was a lot of pain, and it was a very long time before I could even think about biting into one of them. They were so hot. They were like radioactive or something. They were ridiculously hot. Anyway, orchid stuff. We're coming to that quiet time, but it's, in my mind, it's the still before the storm, because I know that the winter resting dendrobiums are going to start doing their thing, you know, in 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. It sounds like a long time. Actually, it's less than that. We're getting it nearly 2 weeks into January now. Where did that go? You know. But yeah, we'll have the long cane dendrobiums, things like Nestor and Anosmum and the Aphyllum. So we will have some of those, the Jenkinsii and you know, some others, the Nobile types. So there's going to be a good surge of dendrobium stuff to look forward to, a fair bit of which is pretty spectacular, so that's going to be nice. And at the moment there's a reasonable amount of new growth going on, which is good. But it just, as far as videoing and doing, it's a sea of green, isn't it, really? I mean, it's nice to see the new growths and the new roots and all that, knowing that there will be blooms down the line. But the twinkles are starting to go over now. The cinnamon is starting to drop its leaves. The one at the back here has dropped 2 of its spikes, leaving 1. So the only twinkles that will be left now is the yellow one, which is actually opening up quite nicely now. This was the sadder part of the plant. It basically started to rot in its pot, so I had to take it out and do a quick repot, and I decided to mount it, but it fell into 2 parts. So this was the larger part, but I left some of the older parts of the plant on, and the newer growths have grown down the bottom. But yeah, that opened relatively recently, so yellow twinkle. I'm tired. I'm holding this at the screen. I'm wondering why it's not in the middle. It's not in the middle because the camera films through the lens, not through the screen. Duh. Come on, concentrate. But yeah, I got a job to hold this still. But very delicate flowers. Same fragrance, basically. Hardly any in this particular case. Not enough light. Not enough light. I bet the tiny twinkle down here is highly fragrant because that's been sat in the sunshine for a bit. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. Right, let's put you back where you go before I forget. Lives up there for now. It's catching the light lovely up there. See, that would have made a good photo up there as far as the blooms are concerned, but not the backdrop. You know, some manky old wood and a metal grid and everything like that and wires is not a good backdrop. You have to think about these things when you're putting a photo into any form of competition, is look for clutter, declutter, get rid of everything that shouldn't be in there that's distracting. And if you can't get rid of it because you can't move what you're taking a picture of, then use your depth of field in your camera to actually make sure your depth of field is only the subject. And then everything behind it just becomes blurry. And it's less distracting that way. If you have those sort of controls. If it's a fully automatic camera, then you can say goodbye to all that sort of level of control. But yeah, it's just that time of year at the moment. Let's get my other Vanda out of the bucket. They haven't been in the bucket for a while. They've must have thought water's dried up on the planet, because I haven't actually put them in there for a while. But they're not using much water this time of year. In theory, they should still get watered regularly because they're bare rooted, but you know, not so much. Just thinking, is there anything else to sort of show that we've sort of had a look at and then left for a while and not looked at for a while? Really, the Orangus are Doing okay now. Little fastuosa. The trouble is these are tiny. Out here I'm in quite bright light, but the camera's not. It's sort of in the doorway. But the little fastuosa has a tiny new leaf. So that one's starting to grow. Oh, that's my phone. It'll have to wait. I'll go and see who it is in a minute. Trouble is I can't get out the door, the camera's in the way. So it will stop in a minute, I'm sure. There we go. And then it'll start again. And then it'll stop when they get fed up of waiting. There you go. Now this one I can never remember the name of, but it's a strange name. It's a very long name. And it's lots of little plants. And they're all growing. Every single one of them's got a new leaf. So I'm pleased with that. You have to bear in mind all of my Orangis are replacements. And then the Mr. Sidii was 2 plants, one reasonable size. I don't think that's blooming size. I think that's going to need a year or 2, quite honestly. But it's not a bad plant. Not a bad plant. And the other one was like more of a, not far off a seedling. That's also got a new leaf starting. So yeah, so the Orangis are sort of coming on okay, you know, it's doing okay. What else haven't we looked at lately? You're not going to like this, but there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it. I've decided that can go. It doesn't do much for me, and that's an awful lot of plant and takes up an awful lot of space. And yeah, that can go to somebody else who likes bulbophyllums and perhaps has only got like a young version of this that would like a, you know, a bigger version sort of thing. The problem is there's no way that can be posted, so it's got to wait to such a time where I can get it to the Orchid societies and you know, actually hand it over. But yes, that one's going to go. There's some others in my mind that are on their way out. And some others that are borderline, depending on what they do next, really. Do they earn their keep? This dendrobium's going to go. I bought it, not realising how big it was going to get, and it's just too much. You know, it's too much of a plant. The blooms are quite nice, but these long canes down here are still growing. They're not finished yet, and they're ridiculously long. And the little new growths I had at the top are just you know. So it's going to be too much of a plant. And these really long cane plants have got to be special because of the amount of space they take up and the amount of effort they take getting up, getting down, getting up again, trying not to break them, trying not to hook them up on something else and damage it. They're just a nuisance. So that one's one that's going to go. And then I've got anosmum and Nesta. And along the same lines, do I really need both? They both flower around the same time. They've both got short-lived blooms, and if you put them next to each other, I defy anybody not to choose Nesta. If you had to say, right, you can only have one, which one do you want? You'd choose Nesta, not anosmum. And the blooms do last slightly longer on Nesta. So I'm weeding things out, slowly but surely, as time goes on. And you have to bear in mind, I like the idea of a rolling collection. You know, when you've had a plant for quite a number of years, and you sort of think, it might be nice to have something else in that space and let somebody else have a go with that one and roll the collection along so that it doesn't stay the same all the time. But if it stays the same all the time, there's potential for getting bored with it. And then you start looking at everything you do as a chore instead of a pleasure. And that, you know, that can, I have times when I come out here and I've felt obliged to do something because I must, not because I actually want to. And sometimes you are in that state, and if you didn't do that, then things might start dying, you know, like watering when you need to. I did a massive watering session yesterday, despite having an afternoon Zoom meeting. I started early in the day and cracked on with it. And it was one of those things where my mind just glazed over. I don't need to be concentrating to do this job. I just need to mundanely pick that one up, water it, put it back, pick that one up, water it, and do it methodically. And I got through it. So apart from the Vandas, which I've just done, and the Wren and Theras, everything got done. And now, no watering today. Tomorrow, the mounts will come round again. But they can't be watered at the moment. We have no flipping water. We've run out. And I didn't want to set the RO unit up outside today because the temperature is just so low. Whereas tomorrow, we're expecting a rise. So although it might be a bit of a chilly start, we've got a warm airflow coming in. So I'll be happy that the RO unit membrane can go out in the sort of temperature where it won't freeze. Because as we all know, the thinner a film of water, it doesn't need to go down to 0 to freeze. If you think that's the frost principle, isn't it? Very, very thin layer of condensation freezes at about 2 degrees, not 0. And it's the same with the membrane in an RO unit. That can freeze at sort of 4 or 5 degrees. So don't let them get cold. A bit like the Tories, really. Don't let them get cold. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that for today. I'm sorry there's sort of no real subject matter. But I spent a bit of time. I had a look through some of the older lists of ideas and stuff. And I just thought, I haven't got a subject for today. So all you lovely people who like the Sunday chat, might be worth having a few suggestions again. To see what we can talk about on a Sunday. It needs to be orchid related though, we don't want to wander off too far. You know, we do a lovely Sunday chat on pets and things but like that, but that's not, it's an orchid channel, isn't it? So we need to stick to the point. But you know, I mean, sometimes just a list of plants that people would like to see a bit closer up and have a chat about. You know, sometimes just some plants might be an idea. I mean, I've got so many that I walk out here and think, right, which plants shall I talk about? And I can't pick them, you know, because they're all here. Whereas, you know, you might come up with, you know, oh, could you have a closer look at so-and-so? We haven't seen that for a while. And is there anything special about it as regards looking after it? Well, you've heard my theories on looking after plants. They don't far off get the same treatment out here. There's a few variables, but it's mainly in the watering frequency. Apart from that, you all get very similar care. But, and some things just don't do very well, and some things do very, very well. And other things are in the middle, and they sort of do okay. And they survive and they still bloom, you know, but you wouldn't call them doing exceptionally well. I think, quite honestly, to be exceptionally well, they'd have to be picking on something like, well, the Jenkinsii, I'd say that is doing exceptionally well. You know, it's a pretty hefty plant. I bet that would look nice in the sunshine. But when it's in the sunshine, it's not in the line of fire of the camera. But I mean, you know, that grows incredibly well for me on its mount. This was taken off of its mount not long ago, and all the older parts of the plant taken off, and the growing parts of the plant rearranged to make a nice plant. It's doing it again. It grows so vigorously for me. You know, I've got actively growing parts here, yeah? But I've got a little bald spot in the middle again where it's grown away from the centre. You know, what I might do this time, rather than take it all off and rearrange it, is just when a piece that's like right up near the edge like that, take that piece off and put that piece in the middle over the top of what's already there and see what it does with that. But I mean, that's a plant that's very successful, does well, blooms very well. Regularly, no question about that blooming. Despite putting my winter temperature up a little bit this year, that will still bloom nicely. Another dendrobium that is difficult to compete with. I've yet to see anybody else that's got one this sort of size, is my Hercoglossum, because it is a bit of a monster. And it just grows well for me. Part of that is because I twigged, instead of me growing it the way I want, I grow it the way the plant wants, because it continuously grows. These are 2-year-old canes. There's still life in the end of some of these canes. There's still, on some of them, producing a new leaf. All of last year's growths are still growing. They're still pushing leaves out. So it's got like about a 2.5 year growing cycle for each cane, which is unusual. But it took a while to find that out. And you know, I mean, when that has its mass blooming, it's stunning. So I mean, that grows incredibly well for me, so that's a bit special. And despite the blooms not being long-lived, I love them, and I love the plant, and I love the way that it grows for me, so, you know, that wouldn't go anywhere. We've got quite a lot of new plants that have yet to bloom. You know, there's a fair set there. There's the ones that came from Jeff, the ones that came from the Schwerter order, where I ordered 4 and 8 turned up. That's what happens if you leave orchids on their own in the dark. You know, so I mean, there's quite a lot of new plants came in during this year. Some were bought in bloom, yes, but a lot have come in as unbloomed plants to grow on. It's one of the Cattleya types up here that didn't have very good roots at all. Well, the latest growth now does have good roots, so that's going to push on nicely. So, yeah. We've got quite a lot of unbloomed plants in here that will be first time bloomers when they get round to it. And I'll have to say if they get round to it, because some of them, although you get this near blooming size idea, what they mean is this latest growth that's growing is not going to bloom. You've got to wait for the next one to fully mature. You know, that could be 1.5 years. So we shall see. And I've even got one that I've had some time that has yet to bloom, that should bloom this season, which is this Epidendrum, Lanipes. Lovely big new cane. These are the old canes that were on it when I got it, so I would say that's, you know, it was a division off of a blooming size plant, so that's about the size they get to, and that's the one I grew. So I think we're up to producing new growths that are capable of blooming, that being one, but it hasn't. Now it might be because it grew at the wrong time of year, and it may do its thing next year, but I don't even know what the blooms are going to look like. I could have a good guess because it is Epidendrum, you know, they all have a sort of look about them, don't they? But I've also got duplicates that will have to be sorted out. I've got 2 yellow twinkles, I don't need 2. I've now got 3 of the red fantasy twinkles mounted, I don't want 3. Although one of those is already earmarked. Don't let me forget that. I've got several duplicates around which will get sorted out. And I've still got in the back of my mind that I might get rid of the cool growers that don't do very well. I would keep the Restrepias because oddly, they do well, even though they're a cool grower that need higher humidity than I've got, they still grow okay. Whereas, you know, the Draculas and the Masdevallias not so good. I wouldn't get rid of my Miltoniopsis, even though they're cooler growers, because they annoy me such that I know they don't like the heat, but they don't get the heat all the time. And in the time when they don't get the heat, they come into that category of, why won't you grow properly? So they annoy me, that they're not quite right yet. So work still needs to be done on them. Well, I can't do that work if I get rid of them, can I? I want to beat them. I want them to grow on, get some decent root systems and bloom. It's a challenge. We've had a challenge where we've been killing plants over a long period of time. The Zygopetalums, they die for me. Well, this one isn't. Well, there's new growth. Lovely, healthy, green new growth with a bunch of roots pushing down in the pot. We repotted this and the old roots didn't die. I've cracked it. There will be a few more zygos. When I see plants, zygos that look like a reasonable plant, I can see some decent roots. I mean, this has got two new growths, that one and that one. They're both pushing on nicely. This one's in the middle of the plant, so it may well be producing lots of roots and I can't see them yet until they sort of make their way to the edge. And then this little new growth here is sort of, it's a little stunted. I'm not sure it will fully develop, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, I mean, that's quite a nice healthy looking zygo. I mean, they're very prone to leaf spotting. Now I've got some marks on a leaf there that's not leaf spotting. That looks like physical damage, not when it was here. But they're nice green leaves, we've got some roots and we've got new growths pushing on. So I've beaten that one, that with help. Always acknowledge, you know, when you get some good information from somebody. Michael McCarthy did a write-up on how he looks after those, which seemed to work very well, so I thought, well, we'll give it a go, and it seems to be working, so thanks for that. You can do the same thing for the Miltoniopsis, that would be great, especially as we've actually got 3 species in there now. Bearing in mind there's only 5, I think there was 6 once, and one became extinct, and I think had been rare for such a long time. I'm not sure it's around in cultivation. There's something about the 6th one that I read a very long time ago, which means technically there's only 5 now. None of them are common in the wild, but some of them are, you know, there are many in cultivation, so they can't be lost now. That's the thing, you know, they can't be lost. That's the important bit. Right, so coffee's half cold, so it must be time to pack the video in. Built-in clock coffee. And I will see you in the next video, which is highly likely to be tomorrow. I will do the selection video for the dendrobiums, which is the next group on the list to sort out the 2021 project orchids. So I'll select 7 and we'll drop 2 via the comments again like we did before. So that will probably be tomorrow's video. That's purely dendrobiums, and if you want to, because obviously I read all my comments, having just heard that, what I've just said, if you want a particular dendrobium that you think really should be in the project orchids, put it in a comment on this video, because once I make the selection tomorrow, it doesn't lend itself to being changed. You know, the list, I mean, sort of thing. We will drop 2 and take it down to 5. We may do like we did last time and end up, you know, dropping 2 and adding 1 back in. But I'll leave that a little bit flexible. But yeah, if you've got a particular dendrobium that you'd like to follow through this year, then stick it in the comments on this one. And yeah, I mean, orchid societies in most countries are probably grounded. The exception would probably be New Zealand. I can't think of many other places where they would be allowed to gather together in the confined space, but shouldn't whether you can or can't in the States, you shouldn't be. You're flipping death rate and infection rate. I mean, the thing is, what a lot of people don't, I mean, this country is a itty bitty place, and we're all squashed up like this because it's an island. Sorry, not Ireland. It's an island, so it's much easier for stuff to spread, you know, when you're all squashed up together, and that's up to people to deal with it. It's not up to government making rules. It's not up to policeman Plod going around telling people off for taking their dog for a walk. It's up to people. We have got to make the choice. Do we want people to carry on dying, or do we want to put a stop to it, pending the vaccine getting out and everything? But yeah, you tend to forget, you know, you look at the numbers in the States, but now have a look at the actual number of people in the States. You know, there's states that have got more people than our whole country here. And then if you have a look at the size of New Zealand, for instance, and see how many people actually live there, Yeah, that's a good place to go. Trouble is, if everybody goes there because it's all wide open spaces and not very many people, it'll spoil it, won't it? Because then there'll be lots more people and it won't be the same. Yeah. So no, I'm not. Me and my buddies are not all off to New Zealand. But there are places in the world that have thin populations where things are easier to deal with. And put it on yourself. I mean, our latest government policy is to act like you have the virus. So if you knew you had the virus, how would you act? And that's what they want people to do. It's good sense, but trying to get the people to do it is another thing. Some people just won't be told. Anyway, we haven't stormed Parliament over it yet. I'll leave that comment. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for dropping by.